Jazzcast Pros. Being a small business owner in this current climate, trying to grow, navigating cutbacks, and chasing contracts, and trying to build an inclusive team with limited resources can be tough. But this episode is designed to inspire and give you some actionable tips to make it happen. Today, we're joined by the 2025 Top Diversity Officer in America.
What excites me and gives me hope for the future of inclusion is the young folk are just not going to stand for it anymore. Their generation is not standing for it. They just aren't. So I just to be quite honest, they looked at us like you had the opportunity and you messed it up. Not us. We're not doing it this time. They're going to change everything. And I got their back. For the first time, 5 generations are in the workplace. Perfect time to be mentors and teach and guide. That's what gives me hope, because these young folk are looking at me, looking at all of us and saying, help me, teach me, because I have the energy you may not. And I'm not stopping until we change this for the better. So they give me a lot of energy and passion and hope. I'm leaning on them.
Maurice brings more than 20 years of experience in human resources and organizational leadership, scaling teams from 14 to 2,000 and transforming company culture. Welcome to Elevating Enterprise, the podcast that gives you a 100,000-foot view of success,
so you can see exactly what it takes to grow and sustain your business. I'm RJ Williams, and I've spent years working with SMEs, scaling operations and securing contracts.
And I'm Jazzy T, and our mission is to connect you to industry gatekeepers and open doors that will elevate your small business. In this episode, you'll learn why DEI must evolve, but not disappear. How small businesses, especially MWBEs and veteran-owned enterprises, can tap into government contracts and funding. How to use the employee lifetime value scale and create a no-ceilings environment for your team. And why the first question every great manager should ask is, how do you like to be managed? So whether you're building a team, applying for state contracts, or trying to lead with impact, this episode will help you make smart moves, even in uncertain times. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today on Elevating Enterprise, we're joined by Maurice Barrett. He is the newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer at the New York State Homes and Community Renewal. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
So let's start off simple. Give us your 60-second elevator pitch of what you do at HCR.
Absolutely. I am the chief executive in charge of real estate housing, affordable housing, and those initiatives work on getting finance and opportunities into communities that need the most assistance in that. Also in charge of the compliance of our initiatives in the housing space.
Okay, great. So the mission essentially for HCR is to expand affordable housing. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So how does diversity play into the work that's being done there?
It plays a big part. And I want to make clear, it starts with data, right? And so we have disparity studies. We have studies that show which neighborhoods are rated lowest on some of the most important socioeconomic scales that we do to understand who is at most need of our social programs. It's funny, when we speak about diversity, it's a positive, except in certain areas, right? We always look to make sure there is diversity in our portfolios. We make sure there's diversity in school searches with our children, diversity in job search and so forth. But we want to make sure also that there is diversity in the amount of folks who have access to the great programs that we have. And so all that really means is we make sure that for the area that is currently constituted, we get to know the area, we get to know the human beings that are in that area, we get to know what they need, and we uniquely solve for what they need, right? It's not just a one size fits all. One of the things that I also do is I'm a high school football coach, right? And if we're lucky enough to win another state championship, I take them out, and we go celebrate. I say, listen, we're all going to go out and get ice cream, celebrate. You're going to all get, my favorite flavor, licorice ice cream. That's fair, right? That's fair. That's not equitable. It did not serve all of their needs, but I can always fall back on saying I gave them all the same thing, right? And so I'd like to use that analogy just to simplify for folk who really don't want to understand that there is a unique and specific need for this work, and this work isn't about some of the buzzwords that we see out there, and instead this work is specifically about solving the unique needs of individuals and individual groups based on their specific location within New York. Because let me tell you, Albany needs something different than Rochester, needs something different than Syracuse, and definitely needs something different than what we have downstate, right? And so if we understand that, then we can really, really start having a serious conversation and find an equitable way to serve, right?
Well, Maurice, I want to say congratulations on being named the top diversity officer in America.
Oh, thank you.
I can see why, just in that little blurb there. So what does this honor mean to you personally? And what message do you think it sends, even in this 2025 political climate of DEI must DIE and all of that stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I've gotten a few emails from individuals that have said kind of the same thing, like, this role shouldn't exist. First of all, thank you. It's a complete honor and a privilege and a complete surprise. I was going out to the conference anyway. I was going to speak on a few panels, and then they surprised me with this. So I'm definitely honored. What it means to me, the conference was great, a lot of energy. But what it means to me is the work, and we're still invested in it. It means that we are looking for the real, true practitioners of this work, because we know that those of us who have been in the work over a decade have gone through a lot of that struggle where we had to show the value in the work, right? I like to say I got a lot of expensive doors slammed in my face early on in trying to speak about this work, right? Now it's not the same, but we're under attack. So it makes it clear that those who are serious about this work and have a footing and stand with it with the temerity that it deserves are now at the forefront, because we need them there. Because this is a battle of our lifetime. Language matters. And so I'm honored. I always say that I approach this job with the utmost humanity. I try to, see the humanity in everything I do. And I do also say and believe every decision that I make either furthers the disparity or shortens the disparity. People are quite aware of those organizations that are monolithic or homogenous, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at the top 10 Fortune 500 companies, you'll see they're the most diverse. So when we start having the real conversations, you can really start understanding what the work means. Earning that award, it just means that the work is continuing. It's as important, but also that it wasn't in vain. Those conversations in the copy room, in the basement with those 7 other folks in your office 15 years ago, talking about making safe spaces and cultivating culture and things like that. I'm very proud and honored. To answer the second part of your question, one thing I did take from the conference that even it was a learning experience for me is, yes, people are out here with the rally cries of DEI must DIE and things of that nature. And then every night on the news, we see something that says another organization, another college or university has jettisoned their DEI program. And we had many folk from the media there, and we had a lot of folk from Fortune 500 companies and otherwise. And they made it clear, we just changed the name.
Right.
We just recalibrated the language. We're still doing the work. Right. So please, there is an agenda for people to feel like it is under constant attack and people are acquiescing and capitulating to those attacks. That is not the case. What we're doing is being strategic.
Yes.
What we're doing is making sure that we hold that work at the level of reverence that it deserves to be, and still are doing the work. So I want to make that clear. That's a big nugget that I took away from the conference, outside of being honored, and that was great. Now I feel more pressure, right? But no, I take that seriously. I take that role and honor and responsibility seriously. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. How did the mission become sort of hijacked? It started like some that were behind it and pushing, kind of waffling in it now. What is that? What's contributing to that?
As many of these questions are, they're complicated, but not impossible to explain. Because it's complicated because there's dual accountability. You have practitioners like myself who have continued to do our seminars the way we've done them 5 days a week, 8.5 hours a day. We start from the Trail of Tears, Force Assimilate, and we really go through and talk the painstaking, and we break down and we speak to why it's important. We are the voices of dissent. We do speak about education, but we're certified, and we speak about the history, the shoulders we're standing on, and we also speak about the actual technical aspect of the work. End of 2019, 2020, our work got highlighted at a higher level and a higher rate. At Aubrey, right? George Floyd, and unfortunately, many others, right? Through the next 18 months, right, that caused this social unrest, right? Which brought more people to the work. Some people started getting so much notoriety and gained gravitas from this work that did not really
Embody.
research the work. Yeah. So those folk are easier to be co-opted, and thus the message starts to get diluted. And then you started to really see some of the natural. I want to be clear. This is natural. That pendulum swing backwards. Where I talk to many CEOs who have me as a consultant, they're actively paying me and still saying to me, "I'm sick of this," because it was everywhere. And so you had that pullback, and so those folk who had to stay on the periphery because they were opponents of the work started gaining more and more allies. And so now that group started growing again to those larger numbers. And then you tie that into what we've seen politically, and that's the perfect storm, right? And then they have their perfect leader for that movement. But I will say that again, coming back from that national leadership conference and understanding that us practitioners who have been in this work for almost 20 years are still doing it. We're still pushing the work forward. Yes, we've seen a lot of our colleagues get their data wiped off, the internet as if it never existed. We've seen those mentors of ours get contracts canceled that are federally funded. We've seen great grants in healthcare and otherwise get pulled in the middle of its work being seen through execution. People are literally getting IVs taken out of their arm and telling them they have to, exit facilities, heinous things like that. But it's easier to get co-opted when it isn't about the actual work anymore. It's about the attention to the work, and also not just the value it gets from the attention, but the value you get. I always speak about a service versus serve us proposition. I always said in human resources, when I was a chief HR officer for 20 years, this is a service department. Okay, so we have to come as our best self because this is the service, right? We give them the service of anything they need, anything the humans need. We are a service. If we don't come as our best selves, we'll become a serve us department because now we're just trying to survive. Now we're just trying to get by. And now we don't care about that issue. We're not going to sit with the uncomfortability of that assistant manager sitting in front of us.
Right.
We're going to get into the disease of doing and say, I'm over it. And then you're going to cause more issues, or you're going to turn a blind eye to something you normally wouldn't. And so in this case, it's serve us, but literally where folk are seeing that they can gain from this. Me being a consultant in DEI for over 15 years and me championing this work internally at my organizations for more, I'm of service. Those who come at it from that different angle of, oh, this is where I can level up, so to speak. It's now serve us, and you will never approach the work properly if it's the serve us proposition.
Absolutely, understood. So let's get into some of the mission of the Homes and Community Renewal Agency. Some of the fundamentals, the real estate evaluation, the land acquisition, the timetable to approvals, and how do SDVOB businesses as well as MWBE businesses participate in the development program. Because those are the things that actually are what we call pragmatic. They're actually impactful. They're actually the execution. They're the actual impact directly to the person.
Yes, it is a lot, right? It is a lot. That's why I came to this work. I am someone who grew up housing insecure. I was unhoused during blizzards. I was unhoused for certain parts of my childhood. So I uniquely understand what it's like to be without in that level and in other areas. We do invest in things that make New York more affordable, but we invest in things that make it more inclusive, right? We invest in things that make it more vibrant, right? Make it a better place to live, work, to enjoy life, to understand what quality of life is. Now, almost 100,000 affordable homes have been created and preserved since our inception and collection of agencies a few years ago. Almost 12,000 new homeowners, right? These are beautiful human beings who love the state and want to continue to be a part of the state, but want to just be able to find a way to afford living within the state, right?
Absolutely.
That's tied to, I know, something uniquely, Jazz, that is close to your heart, which is then almost 1,000 new small businesses we've funded and are currently supporting. So now they're able to do more with what we're able to provide and not have to worry about working and not seeing that money go to use, or not being able to pay for childcare, impacting all communities across the state. And that's the inclusiveness we're speaking about. It's not about one, it's about impacting all in the unique ways that they need to be impacted. We have to build the requisite value.
You brought up a great point too, and I just want to make sure it wasn't lost in a lot of the other points that you were making just now is, especially after the pandemic, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, we were forced to work from home, right? This whole remote work became a global thing. And a lot of small businesses realized, hey, I actually can run this whole thing from my living room because I have been doing it for the last year. So maybe I'm going to let go of that office space, or I'm going to go ahead and downsize in different ways, and I can meet my team remotely. And so by having affordable housing and having a home of their own that maybe, either the rent is less or they're just not spending as much money on rent because now they own the house, and then they can pour back into their business. So I can see how the work that you're doing there with the HCR is actually supporting those solopreneurs. But for more of the SMEs and the medium enterprises, Ruben, I know that you have a vested interest in getting some of these government contracts. And so there are a couple of programs that are available. And that's really where we kind of want to go next in this conversation is, what are these programs and how do people get involved with what you're doing there?
Yes. The program specifically, the MWBE and the Service Disabled Vet Developer Support Program, how can they get involved with that?
Absolutely. It starts with being able to get certified, okay, and getting through that certification process. From there, we are connected and we walk you through a great intake conversation. We have a great team that handles those opportunities and creates the sustainable chances for those resources to continue on. We make sure that we have on our website the funding and award opportunities. It's right there on that tab in the upper right, and it really walks you through. It has videos that take you from program to program. We have program for small, medium, and large size developers. We are actually in the process of partnering and creating some larger and broader initiatives and programs, going from, if it's for rental, home ownership, development, funding specific larger projects. And the reason why I say that, I know we're talking about SDVOB and MWBE opportunities, but I want to be clear that true to our mission, those opportunities exist uniquely for MWBEs and SDVOBs across all of those programs. Excellent. Right. And so we even have programs for resilient homes and communities, sustainability programs. Our housing grant programs, we award at a very high rate. We do counseling for subcontractors. And one of my favorites is the rehabilitation, right, where we do a statewide funding for housing rehabilitation, again, because that's the renewal part of the homes. We then also have a specific eye to making sure that we create and manage those opportunities. And that department is our DECO department. And DECO stands for our Department of Empowerment, Compliance, and Opportunities. And our main mission is to promote state contracting opportunities for MWBEs and SDVOBs and any historically undervalued businesses in the state. So it's all about business opportunities, development opportunities. And we do that through regulatory compliance, contract oversight and assistance, right? Technical assistance, stakeholder engagement. And a big part, I will say again, is last but definitely not least, advocacy. We have and that's why you'll always see us out. You'll see our teams out. You'll see me out at all of the events speaking about our mission, what funding opportunities we have, who we can help. But again, I want to be clear: any minority and/or women-owned business enterprise has to be certified. So right, and so we have, as you well know, we're connected with ESD very closely, which is New York State's Empire State Development Division, and so they really help us with a lot of the connections with certifications, making sure the constructs are set, we have the proper procedures being followed, and as well as exact same for our services, disabled veteran-owned businesses. We do assist with the certification. We do help with outreach and education. We do help with compliance monitoring. We do help with reporting results, goal setting, policy analysis, and review. We do all of that. I want to be clear that is part of the mission, not the whole mission.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing.
Wow, that's a lot. So I also wanted to, because you mentioned this a couple of times, your experience in HR, and actually you've been recognized by SHRM, so the Society for Human Resource Management, for people who are unfamiliar. And you were the 14th employee at a startup and then grew that to a team of 2,000. So can you tell us about that journey and what you learned along the way and what you wish you would have known maybe in the beginning?
Oh, my mom's smiling right now as I say this, but part of it was God, right? So I had no thoughts of being in HR. I thought HR at that time, I'm older than I look. So at that time, HR was hire, fire, retire, right? And we were in the basement and so I never wanted to do that. But I had an opportunity to do an internship. I did that. And it happened to be in the HR department, met my mentor, and he said, this is probably where you belong. And I started in an entry-level position for a startup, managing their HR affairs, sitting in a small, tiny trailer, doing all the paperwork by hand, creating all the job descriptions, doing all the hiring, going through all the interviews, benefits, all of it by hand, right? And we started scaling, we started growing. I was a department of one for about 2 years, and we just kept growing. I went from being a department of one to 5 years later, I was a department of almost 30. And then, I find myself there almost 11 years, and we purchased a few organizations. We have a board. I'm a senior VP, and then I'm promoted to a chief HR officer. And this was before I turned 26, right? So I'm a C-suite at that age. I've leveled up an organization. Wow. I didn't plan that at all. I didn't want to be in HR. I followed my mentor's guidance. I got an entry-level role after an internship. And I worked. I was intentional. I learned while I was there. I went to every SHRM conference I could get to. I learned from everyone I could. I was spending a lot on those. I was going down to the corporate center at this time in South Jersey for ADP and learning how to do payroll. I wanted to, learn it all, and it really helped me. Proximity to power is proximity to chaos, and so you have to be prepared, right? And so I say that from experience because it was a chaotic time. I had to be ready to pivot at all times. It was very toxic, right? I burned the candle at all ends. I didn't leave before my manager, which was the CEO. So, you're leaving like 12 o'clock at night. I get promoted by making the senior team look good is how I was raised, right? And I helped us grow sustainably, right? I was the cold water and I took that role seriously, right? The voice of dissent. They would get excited about doing something. I just throw that cold water on them and say, hang on, we actually can't do that. That there's intrastate compliance at play here. We have to do X, Y, and Z, right? And then they started kind of leaning on that expertise and saying, all right, annoyingly, right? All right, before we do this, we got to go check with Maurice because,
Absolutely.
How he gets.
Last week, we had a representative from Paychex on and basically talking about the reasons why solopreneurs, small business owners should not be running HR and should not be worrying about payroll themselves. So if that's your full-time job, running payroll, can you imagine being the CEO of your own business and doing all that other stuff at the same time? And, what message do you have for people who are the entrepreneur and are trying to do payroll without taking all of those classes and going to the conferences and stuff like that? So what message do you have for that person?
Surround yourself with experts, and I don't care how you get them. Every time we deal with a scaling organization that comes in and asks for any kind of consulting in the HR vein or advice, they've always gotten to the place where now they need HR. Before they didn't think they needed it. And just be clear, we always need it. We always need HR and payroll and accounting. Always make sure we have eyes on that. And so if you want to grow a healthy business, surround yourself with experts. And there are many tiered programs within a lot of the payroll processing systems that will give you a small business discount, right? And so you can go the consulting route. But if you cannot do it yourself and manage it yourself, and you don't have the time to get certified and be that SME at this point, get the experts no matter how you can. And if you're a leader of any kind, and if you're in business, you should consider yourself a leader. I don't care what your title is. If you own the business, you have to make sure that these things are handled. You surround yourself with experts in every area. And so this area is not unique. It's just more important because this area affects every human being that's ever going to do work for you.
Great. That was perfect.
Thanks, Maurice. I mean, you said that.
We're talking about growth, we're talking about expansion, we're talking about, scaling. And, obviously you're in human resources, even the work that you're doing, with housing and all of that and communities, it's still back to people. So I'm really interested in your concept of career mapping and employee lifetime values and how that is really helping with retention.
Those are things that I feel like if I ever write a book, you're going to see that probably 12 or 13 times throughout the book. Employee lifetime value scale is something that my thought is the human being that's working within your department, your vertical, your team, their tenure, commensurate with that tenure, that's how their value should go, right? So if they're here 5 years, I better see that value going up. They enter our organizations, our teams, so forth, with a requisite set of skills. Right? A requisite set of skills, or they wouldn't be there.
Right.
So what's our job? Right? Our job is to sharpen those skills or open that toolkit and place more tools in the toolkit.
Right.
And if we don't do that, we're a bad manager, right? A bad manager hires a 5-year mistake at least. And so I believe in the employee lifetime value scale. And I believe in order to do that, create individual development plans. I do that from day one. It's not punitive for me. I want to know what you're into, what certifications you're going for, what kind of lateral moves you'd be interested in, promotions, so forth. I want to know. And I'm going to have my weekly one-on-ones, and I'll be able to, no one can come to me and say, hey, what's going on with Lucy within your department? And I'd be like, oh, I'm not sure. I will know, right? I will always understand. And then I can always advocate for them, right? Properly. And then the second part, which I think is probably more important, is the career mapping and tracking, because that has to be done from the highest of levels. We're investing in succession planning, right? We're investing in leveling of roles. We're investing in wholesale organizational development. So we're building out the rungs of the department. We're building out the pay structure. We're building out how one can progress. We're building out the training and development cadence. If we're talking about a robust undertaking where we're doing this holistically and we're engaging in what I call great HR, then when we're talking about career mapping and tracking, it's going to take that full suite in order to do it properly. You're going to have to offer those options for career development. What does that look like? Mentorship, and internship, and fellowship.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the full suite. It's a large undertaking, yes. But just because it's hard doesn't make it impossible. And our human beings come to us for what we call, the term is a livelihood. Now think about what that means. Right? Think about how heavy that weight, livelihood. It's a heavy undertaking, but it's important and it's well worth it. And so for me, it's mandatory. Non-negotiable career mapping and tracking.
So you often talk about creating no ceilings environment. So what does that look like in practical day-to-day leadership?
That's tough because it goes back to that intentionality we're speaking about, right? I cheat a little bit, right? I start day one with whoever I have in my department and I ask them how they best like to be managed. And every time I say that at a seminar or a TED Talk or a panel or any, I get people like, I spoke at SHRM last year at their annual conference, and I had a line afterwards where we're saying, I never really thought of that. I never thought to ask the human being I'm in charge of professionally how they like to be managed.
Yeah.
Right. And people see like, oh my gosh. But understand, I'm not going to, belabor the football analogy again. Right. But each one of your direct reports needs something different. Right. And so when I speak about no glass ceilings, it's back to that, again, every decision you make in leadership either furthers the disparity or shortens the disparity. Knowing that, I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to find out how you want to be managed. And then I'm going to build out a plan that works for you. That's equity, right? Because I'm making sure what's right for you to move up is not going to be the same as this person, but I'm doing the same thing for them, right? And so for me, the no glass ceilings mean I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're a mother, a single mother. I don't care what your background is. I don't care how many times a day you have to excuse yourself to go pray. I don't care if you're a single father. I'm going to do what I call speak into their listening, learn how to speak into their listening, and be able to manage them the way they need to be managed for them to progress. My wife and I have a nonprofit in New Jersey that we ran more actively before I started selfishly doing a lot of the things that I'm doing. It's centered around no glass ceilings for young ladies. So it's the softball program. It's community engagement, right? It's learning that you can be successful on the ball field or in the boardroom, but the competencies are the same, and no one should look at you differently because you're a young lady. I extrapolate that across any diaspora of individuals I work with, and so there are no glass ceilings. There's no a limit to where you can progress here, because I'm going to speak into your listening uniquely, develop you based on that employee lifetime value scale, and get you where you need to be, right? And if I don't do that, I'm not doing my job. And so for me, there can't be a glass ceiling, right? It's impossible to exist in an environment if you cultivate it that way.
And so just to be clear, so that organization with your wife is the Garden State Glory.
Garden State Glory, yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Love that.
What advice can you give people to kind of prepare themselves to be coached? Because you and I got similar backgrounds. I was a high school basketball coach. I used all the principles. I played sports, obviously, growing up. A lot of the principles there have transferred well to business for me and the most people I see successful. So what do you say?
That's a great question. And I love the analogy and the tie-in, right, to sports. I coach young men and young women, but I learned so much from my young ladies that helps me navigate corporate America, government, and so forth. The best managing I do is managing grown-ups like I manage the young ladies on my softball team. And if you tell anyone I said that, I'll lie. But that is because the tenets are the same, right, Ruben? Like, it's the same. And also, if a resume comes across my desk, right, and if any of my team elevates something, they're like, listen, you guys see, generally speaking, there's something on it that shows me that they've done a team sport at a high level. And I'm not being biased. I'm just being honest, right? Those high performers, there's something to that, playing team sports. And that's why in my household, we have 3 non-negotiables, right? Academic excellence, athletic excellence, and you leave people, places, and things better than you found them. I would give advice to those who are looking to grow in leadership and are at those entry-level or infancy stages. It's be agile, be willing to be agile, be willing and able to put in some additional critical thinking. So all I mean is when you spot an issue, that's a great thing. The second step is to spot potential solves. So I always try to tell the young men and women I mentor, you go to your senior leadership with issues, and that's great. They see that you have a level of discernment. What will take you to the next level if you've already worked out some of the ways to solve them. And then it runs the gamut. I have some growing executives at Google that I mentor, and there are some that are at the infancy stages, but I can already see them ramping up because they're willing to do those things, right? Communication is the most important tenet. Some of the young college kids that speak to me, I'm scanning across my screen, looking at your faces and so forth, just because that's my habit, right? And then they are looking down. They're not used to
the eye contact,
which is extreme, right? Yeah, because there's no discernment. You're not breaking down body language, any nonverbal cues. Communication is the response we get back. You have no idea if what you're saying landed as well as you thought it should or was appropriate if you're not really focusing on the response. And so we can't listen just to respond. We have to truly listen to decode what's disseminated, right? A quiet defense is a dumb defense, right? If we're quiet, if we're not communicating, then we're not working. Right. And I take that, extrapolate it to levels of leadership. The best leaders I know, mentors or otherwise, great leaders, they know how often to communicate, they create feedback loops, but they don't shy away from the uncomfortable conversation. They know that it moves things forward. And then I will say, being able to manage your calendar, your schedule, and your spirit, your safety, right? We tend to ramp up and then we don't show up as our best selves. And when we go to adjudicate something is not done in the best way, we don't show who our best self is. And we remove ourselves from conversations, situations, and meeting rooms, right? We want to make sure that we're putting our oxygen mask on first and showing up as our best self.
Right.
That means boundaries, right? And that means communicating and setting the proper expectation for those who need access to you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent message right there. And on that, let's end it.
Yes.
Sorry.
And what's the best place to connect with you?
I'm old and boring, right? So it's LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect with me. And I make it pretty easy. If you search Maurice K. Barrett, you'll find me.
Okay, awesome. Yep. So all the information is available in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and helping us to elevate enterprises.
I'm grateful to you both, Ruben and Jazz, and we have more conversations upcoming. I'm grateful for those already. And Elevate Enterprises is a fantastic opportunity and vehicle for us to continue to teach and learn from one another. So I'm so grateful to have folk like you engaging and uplifting and moving us forward. So thank you.
Affordable housing and inclusion isn't just a social good, it's an economic strategy. When people can live affordably, they can reinvest in their businesses, families, and futures. And qualified MWBEs are going to be working on these affordable housing developments, which are economic drivers in the local community. Here are your 3 key takeaways. DEI isn't dead, it's evolving. Maurice reminds us that while federal funding may shift, the real work of equity continues in new ways, often under new names, and with deeper strategy. Number 2, certification unlocks opportunity. MWBEs and service-disabled veterans need to get certified to compete for state contracts, and HCR's DECO team is there to help every step of the way. Number 3, HR is not optional. Whether you're managing one freelancer or building a full team, you need systems for retention, compliance, and development. That's why asking, how do you like to be managed, is so important and a key to success. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Elevating Enterprise. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you'll get alerts when the new episodes drop every Thursday. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep building, and keep elevating, because success isn't overnight, it's strategic.